When I say the word breadwinner, what's the first image that pops into your head? For a long time, it was a pretty specific, kind of old school picture, right? Well, that picture has been completely redrawn over the last 50 years. So let's dive in and deconstruct this myth to see what being a breadwinner really means today. So yeah, that's the big question, isn't it? Who is today's breadwinner? And trust me, the answer is way more complex and way more fascinating than you might think. Okay, so here's the reality check, straight from the latest Pew Research data. In 55% of marriages, yeah, the husband is still the primary or sole earner. But look at this. Almost a third, 29% of marriages are now egalitarian, where both partners earn about the same. And in a whopping 16% of marriages, the wife is the primary or sole breadwinner. That traditional model, it is no longer the only game in town, not by a long shot. To really wrap our heads around how huge this shift is, we need to rewind the clock a bit. This isn't something that just happened. Nope. We're talking about a 50-year transformation that has totally reshaped the economic landscape of the American family. This timeline tells such a powerful story. Go back to 1972, and in nearly half of all marriages, the husband was the sole provider. Think about that. By 1992, that number had fallen off a cliff to just 23%, and it's basically stayed put ever since. But here's the kicker. While the husband as sole breadwinner model flatlined, the rise of dual-earner and egalitarian households fundamentally changed the whole equation. All right, I keep using this word egalitarian, so let's get super clear on what we mean, because it's a key piece of this new puzzle. According to the Pew Research Center, an egalitarian marriage is one where both people are earning a pretty similar slice of the pie, specifically, somewhere between 40 and 60% of the couple's total earnings. And just to make sure we're all speaking the same language, the research breaks it down like this. A primary breadwinner brings in over 60% of the income. A dual breadwinner, that's our egalitarian couple. And a secondary breadwinner is someone whose partner is the main earner. These terms are absolutely crucial as we start to unpack the consequences of these new roles. So, this evolution of roles at home, it has major ripple effects at work. And it makes you wonder, is there actually a link between being a breadwinner and being a better employee? And more importantly, does your paycheck reflect your performance, or does it just reflect your role at home? This is where it gets really counterintuitive. A major study on this topic found something pretty remarkable. The common assumption, right, the myth, is that primary breadwinners are just higher performers at their jobs. But the reality? Well, researchers found that the pay differences between these breadwinning roles were huge, even when there were very, very small differences in actual measured job performance. And this comparison reveals a really key imbalance. On one side, you've got to pay premium. Both men and women who are primary breadwinners earn significantly more. Great. But on the other side, there's a pay penalty that, get this, only applies to women. Female secondary breadwinners are paid less than their peers, even when their performance is exactly the same. But men in that same secondary role, they don't face that penalty. The researchers themselves spell it out perfectly. They conclude that these pay gaps exist even after you control for performance. And this strongly suggests that old stereotypes about who needs the money or who is more committed are creating real, tangible bias in how pay is handed out. This isn't just about dollars and cents. These shifting norms come with a pretty significant psychological price tag, creating new and unexpected pressures on both men and women. As Dr. Joanna Serta at the University of Bath puts it, these traditional social norms about male breadwinning can actually be dangerous for men's health. The pressure to conform or the stress of not conforming has very real consequences. Just take a look at this data from Dr. Serta's 15-year study. It's wild. It shows men's reported stress levels based on their wife's share of the income. So stress is high when they are the sole breadwinner. Okay, it hits its lowest point when his wife earns about 40% of the household income. But, and this is the crazy part, as soon as her income crosses that 40% threshold, the husband's stress levels shoot right back up, becoming even higher than when he was the sole earner. It is a very specific tipping point. And here's a fascinating disconnect. When asked, wives in the study just assumed their husband's stress would be lowest in a perfectly equal 50-50 split. But the men themselves reported feeling least stressed at that 40% mark. It just goes to show you that even when partners are aiming for equality, there can be a real gap in understanding the emotional impact. Okay, so if paychecks are getting more equal, that must mean the workload at home is balancing out too, right? I mean, it makes sense. Well, you might think so, but the data tells a very, very different story. This finding from the Pew Research Center really reveals the central paradox of the modern partnership. Even in those egalitarian marriages we've been talking about, the ones where pay is equal, the division of time is not. The data shows husbands consistently get more leisure time, while wives are still carrying the heavier load of caregiving and housework. So let's look at the hard numbers for these egalitarian marriages. Husbands work about 3 more paid hours per week, but they have nearly 4 more hours of leisure. Meanwhile, wives do more than double the housework. That's 4.6 hours to the husband's 2, and almost 2 extra hours of caregiving. So the bottom line is, financial equality has not yet translated into time equality at home. Not even close. So where do we go from here? If the old definition of breadwinner is obsolete, what does the new one look like? Well, it's about so much more than just a paycheck. This means talking openly about money, not just having one person manage it all. It means planning for the unexpected, recognizing the value of all that unpaid work that keeps a home running, and building a true partnership in every sense of the word. And it's so important to remember that for many, this role is not just a matter of economics, but of survival and pure courage. As an analysis of the film The Breadwinner points out, in many cultures, for a woman to become the provider for her family means defying powerful and restrictive social norms, often at great personal risk. Which leaves us with this final, massive question. We've seen that financially, marriages are becoming more balanced, but as earnings continue to equalize, what's it actually going to take to balance the rest of the equation? The time, the stress, and all the invisible work that happens long after the paychecks are deposited.